Hi, I think whoever's talking is muted. We can't hear anything.
You know what? You are correct. I've been muted since forever. So thank you very much on that. I've just been talking for like 5 minutes. So let me start over. Again, this presentation will be recording. Madeline, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me now? All right, cool. All right, sorry about that. We just did about 5 minute dry run. But we will continue on. So again, my name is Brock Young, currently Deputy Director of the San Francisco Federal Executive Board. What we do is we work to link senior agency officials and build cooperative relationships across the 9-county Bay Area and Northern California, our area of responsibility. Previous to becoming a federal employee, I spent 24 years in the Army and conducted a skill bridge internship with a federal agency on my way out. One of the things that FEBs do best is assist partner agencies find methods to pass the resource shortfalls, talent being one of them. In addition to offering this webinar, we facilitate the Veterans Federal Employment Collaborative, VFEC, a national collaborative that focuses on connecting federal agencies and agencies with qualified veterans and transitioning service members. The link and Facebook groups will be shared at the end of this presentation for anyone interested in learning. Check, make sure. All right. Still talking. Again, going forward, for those taking part in Wednesday's job fair, that's next Wednesday, the 22nd, Customs and Border Protection, one of the agencies involved, recommends that you focus on your resume development and ensuring your resume uses the terms from the announcement and supplemental questionnaire. If you're not quite sure on how to do that yet, that's why we're here. You need to be clear and unmistakable when describing your experience. You need to ensure your resume uses the terms from the announcement and supplemental questionnaire, as I said. And once you've done that, they recommend you triple check your resume to ensure that you are clearly addressing all of the announcement, supplemental questionnaires, questions, and requirements. But how? Well, that brings us to this webinar. One of the biggest things preventing talented people from becoming federal employees is their resume. That's why we are all here, federal resume. Think of the federal resume as an assessment of your writing abilities, research skills, and how well you follow instructions. But perhaps federal resume development isn't the right name for what we're trying to do here. Upfront, regular resumes won't get you interviews for a job. You'll need more. You're going to need to put your resume on beast mode in order to set you apart from the hundreds, sometimes thousands of other applicants who are also applying. All right, what we will cover. First, we will talk about what we won't be covering. Next, we will discuss the federal resume, dispel some myths, and cover a broad overview of the resume development process. Then we'll dive into building your federal resume. This will include sources you can and should get information from, different formats required and optional sections, etc. Next, we will discuss what specialized experience, competencies, and the supplemental questionnaire are and how to tailor your resume to them. We'll then talk about methods for wordsmithing and adding context to your experience. Then we will go into translating your experience, which will be really important for our veterans and transitioning service members. Finally, we will go over some closing tips and additional resources. Please hold your questions until given the opportunity to ask them. I don't want to miss something that you put in the comment section earlier in the presentation. Every so often, we will pause for questions, and we'll have a longer Q&A at the end of the presentation. I see Howard add the comment into the chat box. I appreciate that, Howard. Howard's going to be my assistant. He is one of our SFFEB interns working with us in college. So I really appreciate him giving me a hand with this. Next, we will pause about the 1 hour mark for a short 5-minute break and dive into the final half of our presentation. Finally, please keep your mics on mute unless you are called on or reading for the group. I understand we don't like death by PowerPoint, but I'm here to help you try to get yourself hired. So I appreciate your support and respecting everybody else learning what they need to learn. The things we won't be covering. I don't want to waste your time on things that you may already know or on things that already have excellent resources to answer. USA Jobs has a great series of videos explaining how to use their system, apply to jobs, as well as answer other questions you might have about the process, saving searches, things like that. These are some useful links, and the link to the USA Jobs YouTube channel will be provided at the end of the presentation. If you don't have this or didn't get this, don't worry, they will be shared at the end. Up front, let's dispel some myths about the federal resume. First myth is a big one that I frequently run into. A federal resume should not exceed 2 pages. This is an absolute false. A federal resume requires more information than a civilian resume, therefore is typically longer than 2 pages. We will go into the depth on things that should be included in your federal resume later in this presentation. But make sure you are paying attention to the announcements fine print. Some agencies do have page limits, Homeland Security Investigations, for example. Though for most applications, your resume needs to be as long as it needs to be in order to show you have the qualifications and experience the agency is looking for. Next myth, you must move to Washington, D.C. if you want to work with the federal government. That's a big old false as well. About 15% of federal jobs are in Washington, D.C. metro area, while approximately 83 are found in multiple locations throughout the country, the remaining 2% outside of the United States. So for full disclosure, some agencies would like you to move to D.C. for a time to do a rotation through their headquarters for development and promotion purposes. Keep that in mind. Another myth, resumes are scanned for keywords by an automated system. So this is partially true. Real people, human resources specialists do look at your resume. However, some agencies also use an automated system to review the applications. This is also known as the supplemental questionnaire or self-assessment. For agencies that do use an automated system, the resume review process has 2 parts. An automated application review process to include all the required areas of the applicant's eligibility and qualifications for the job. And this is where you self-select if you meet the requirements for the job. And then followed by a manual review by the HR specialist of your resume. So up front, the idea that you're trying to fool the algorithm by putting in and cutting and pasting information from the announcement isn't going to get you that far. Next myth, job announcement looks like it's been written for someone in mind. False. Job announcement is written by the hiring manager with the assistance of the human resource specialist. Is written to include the knowledge, skills, and abilities required to perform the position. That means, yes, they would like someone to find that position, someone that fits, someone that works in that position, but it's not been written for anybody in particular. And don't think because a job opens and closes within a short window, it means they have someone. This happens when an agency knows they're going to be inundated with applicants and there are only so many HR reviews to go around. Next myth, federal HR specialists will know what I did in the military. This is a big old false. Almost to a person, no, they will not. Veterans and transition service members need to translate their skills and experience into something civilian HR specialists understand. Next, you can't work for the federal government if you have a criminal record. This is false. People with criminal records are eligible to compete for a vast majority of federal jobs. During the hiring process, federal agencies are generally required to consider people with criminal records if they are among the highest rated candidates and can comply with the job requirements. There are some exceptions because of specific laws or statutes that prohibit employment, depending on the crime committed. For instance, certain federal laws, like those prohibiting treason, carry with them a lifelong ban on federal employment. Other federal laws prohibit federal employment for certain years. The bond amendment imposes restrictions related to national security positions. You also have issues for law enforcement if you for domestic violence issues where you are unable to carry a firearm. Next myth, you have to know someone to get a federal job. This is false. You do not need to know anyone to get a federal job. If you are qualified for a federal position, you can write a competitive federal resume. You need to make sure you add your knowledge, skills, and accomplishments, KSAs, into your resume and answer the questionnaire, giving yourself all the credit that you can. You have to apply correctly. You have to apply correctly following the directions. You can get best qualified and referred to a supervisor without knowing anyone in the government. But networking, understanding the federal hiring process, asking for advice, getting your name out there is a way to ensure you are in the know when opportunities do pop up. Next myth I've heard, you need a security clearance to qualify for a federal job. This is false. Not all jobs require a security clearance. You can find this information in the job announcement. However, for those of you that do have security clearances, all federal positions require the candidate to undergo a suitability adjudication process to determine if the individual is suitable for federal employment. This means in addition to meeting the qualifications for a job announcement, the individual is determined likely or not likely to be able to carry out their duties of the federal job with appropriate integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness. What that is a long way of saying is, no matter what, the federal agency will re-adjudicate you even if you have a clearance already. For background, I was adjudicated for a top secret with DOD a year before I retired. When I retired, my first job adjudicated me for a top secret again. That's just a another federal myth, you need to tailor your federal resume to each position. USA Jobs says this is partially true. They say tailoring is not required. However, experience says this is always true. You must demonstrate in your resume that you are qualified for the position, and each announcement is asking for different things. Remember, this is the only information the human resource specialist has to determine if your resume should be forwarded to the hiring manager. So make sure you include everything you can for me. Jobs that closed before the hiring date means the agency had someone in mind. Again, like the myth about the announcement being written for someone in mind, when a job announcement closed before the closing date, this typically means the agency received their limit of applications. Again, this is happening when an agency knows they're going to be inundated with applications and there are only so many reviewers around. Just a quick one. Has anybody else out there heard any other myths? Go ahead and come off of mute if you wanna Roger up.
This is Erica. I've heard that you really need to know someone to get a federal job because you can apply to 50 jobs, but the moment you know someone and who can speak on your behalf, and that's when you really get to see results rather than just applying.
Very true. It does happen. I'm not gonna lie to anybody or try to, downplay the fact that networking and being in the know are absolute solid tactics to getting a federal job. I myself, okay, so I'm gonna, honey, I will answer yours in a second. Sorry, lost train of thought. But yes, applying for over 50 jobs is not unheard of. Before I actually started getting referred, reviewed, and started getting interviews, I had applied to over 100. And turns out that it was me. It was my resume that was causing the issue. So that might be an issue. So honey, is this a myth? If you are applying for a lower position compared to what you did in the military, you won't be considered. That is absolutely not the case, and that is a myth. There is also a myth that your military grade is automatically equivalent to something in the federal government. You'll see later on in the presentation, I add little some tricks, tips for those who have military background. GS 11 equivalent or 04 position, GS 12 equivalent, things like that. That's just to give the HR reviewer an idea. For ladder positions. So thank you, Patricia, for adding. For ladder positions, the agency will likely hire lower grades for retention and training purposes. That's not always true. A lot of agencies do want to promote from within, so they will have very few people coming in at the higher levels. There are certain series like HR that are very specific and require you to get that training at lower levels before you move on. So great questions. All right. Bottom line up front, but everything we will discuss here is a way of doing things. Like most things, there's no single the way to complete a federal resume. This isn't to scare you, just manage expectations. Some agencies like longer resumes, some require a resume of a certain length, some like narratives instead of bullets. Quick cap, sorry about that. Some like narratives instead of bullets, but most will accept either. What we will discuss today are best practices that have been shown to work. Again, your federal resume is your federal job application. It conveys your work history and experience to a potential employer. It is used to determine minimum qualifications as well as the best, most qualified candidates. It can be unlimited length, again, unless specified by the agency. A good rule to follow when trying to figure out how long your federal resume needs to be is your federal resume needs to be as long as it needs to be in order for you to get the job. Federal resume must be written tailored to the announcement, show specific and relevant accomplishments and information. Relevant is experience, knowledge, skill, and training that applies to the job you're applying to. If it's not relevant, leave it out. There's a reason this gets it on its own slide. I know that when I started this process, I included everything I did when I was in the service, no matter how small. While much of it was relevant, there was plenty that wasn't. So I had to clear just because of the fields I was looking into and careers I was looking into. So again, relevant information. Federal resume is your first and potentially only impression. Your resume is the best method to market yourself to potential employers. It must show how you meet the minimum qualifications and must include examples. Again, examples of how, when, and where you use the competencies or skill the agency is. If it's not in your resume, it doesn't matter. It didn't happen. It is not how you think you meet the qualifications. It is how your resume articulates how you meet the qualifications. This is a big one. No one will assume what you did. You have to be clear about articulating what you did. And when developing your federal resume, don't go for minimum qualifications. You want to shoot for very highly qualified, exceeds minimum qualifications, or best qualified, substantially exceeds minimum qualifications. Those are the people that get interviews and get hired. Again, the rule is if it's not in your federal resume, it doesn't count. Do not include things like photographs or videos of yourself or any sensitive information, PII, like age, date of birth, marital status, protected health information, religious affiliation, social security number, etc. In your resume. It will be removed from consideration. Another thing I have seen is even putting SSN or social security number and then having it X'd out will sometimes have it removed from consideration. So it's better just not to include it. All right, so building your federal resume, where are some places you can find information to put in your federal resume? Well, for the veterans and transitioning service members out there, in addition to your joint service transcript, you can also use your VMET for verification of military experience and training. Links will be provided at the end of this presentation if you don't know how to get it. Additional places to go for information include annual personnel evaluations, end of course evaluations, course syllabus for any college or training courses you went to. And don't forget any awards you've received. Those should definitely go in your. All right. Where else could you get resume information from? Go ahead and Roger up if you want to come off chat and come off mute. Where else could you find information for your federal resume?
Mr. Young, Jonathan Felice. So I would recommend if you have some type of evaluations, finished reports, or through the military, you can take some of that information as far as how your reporting seniors have evaluated you, and you can take that and shape it into your resume.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jonathan. Yes, any type of evaluations, the old dirty word of counseling, feedback. These are all things as you get, there you go, agency direct website. I like it. These are all places that you can get information for your resume. We're going to get into different ways and methods of pulling that information here shortly. All right, for the veterans out there and transitioning service members, if you've never seen what a joint service transcript looks like, this is it. It'll open up and it'll give you an idea of what you did, how often, and it's fairly awesome because it explains things in civilian terminology. Again, here's a background from my own JST, the Human Resources Officer. Other places, evaluations are a great place to find achievements. But again, if you're in the military, you're going to have to rewrite your experiences in civilian terms. Another example here from military training course records and different information on these. So civilian and military course completion certificates, 1059s, etc. These will typically include the skills, tasks,
Oh, excuse me, Brock. I think you just got muted again.
I did. How did that happen? Someone keeps muting me. All right, I think I know the problem. So yeah, someone keeps muting all. What was the last thing you heard there, Madeline?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure. You said tailor your resume to fit civilian terminology.
There you go. Okay, thank you. All right, so I gotta keep an eye on that. So someone keeps muting all and killing my feed. All right. So don't forget to include any experience you might have in leadership roles in social and civic organizations. Catherine, I'm going to answer that right now. No, no, it does not. The military just has other pathways, specific pathways to get in that are specific for those individuals, but it does not hurt your opportunity. If anything, serving in the military actually, while it gives you a lot of experience, knowledge, and training that are great for federal employee, you don't understand, most military transitioning service members don't understand how to articulate that. So it actually hurts them in the during the process, but I'll get into that more on that later. Again, for your resume, include volunteer or unpaid experiences, projects with local schools or programs, projects like speaking engagements, or if you have writing credits. Yes, Shayla, there is a presentation being shared. And don't forget any professional or academic challenges and or successes you had in college or even in high school for the young folks out there. So up front, I don't like the USA Jobs resume builder because it's not as flexible as using a Word file, but there are a bunch of templates out there if you want to look online. The biggest thing to consider when deciding what format to use is find a format that allows you to best convey your information. If you still need one, feel free to reach out to me following this webinar, and I will send out the format I use and recommend. Up front, the federal resume does not need to be flashy, have a bunch of tables, cells, colors, etc. You actually can take away from what you're trying to convey, and that is your experience. All right, Sheila is not, yeah, it's probably just you. I'll try and tweak it, but try to log in or come back in. The font of your federal resume needs to be black in color, 11 to 12 point, Arial, Times New Roman, or Garamond font. Again, there should be no text boxes, tables, or color boxes in your federal resume. Finally, read the fine print. Some agencies have different requirements like page length if they accept non-USA job system requirements, date format, etc. Again, always read the entire announcement for information. All right, the federal resume must include the following: your contact information, introduction, work experience, education, volunteer experience, academic awards, achievements and memberships, and references. From the information I have received from many human resources supervisors and specialists, they want to see at least 3. I'll get into more on that later. Before we continue on, yeah, if you're not seeing the presentation, please go ahead and log out, then log back in, because we are presenting and I don't want to kill the presentation for everybody. Most everybody's getting it. The federal resume should also include any professional training. You're going to need your training name, location, city, state, sponsor, as well as start and end date, and the hours you're in it. Certifications, same thing. Military schools, you want to include the organization, the location, dates, completed, the date you graduated, as well as include a short summary of what you learned, skills, and competencies. Contact information. If you don't include your contact information, they cannot find you. If you email addresses, so again, contact information, full name as listed on your records, address. Be aware that some agencies do consider the full street address PII. So I recommend only including the city and state. You want to include your telephone number, and you want to include your email address. Now, for those of you that are out there, have maybe the .mils or the .edu email addresses, I recommend you get yourself a regular Gmail address. Have something professional, something with your name, something that's not, like these, the Rockstar 420 Sergeant Rules or QD4U at Gmail. Just something simple, something professional, something you can use as for contact with your resume. And those service members with a .mil, I recommend you use a civilian email address, just so when you do eventually get out of the service, you still have access to everything that you're while online. Other information that you can and should include. For those new to the federal hiring system, there are many special hiring authorities that you can use that give you a head start when applying for federal positions. For our veterans, when it comes to your resume, veterans preference and special hiring authorities are 2 separate things and serve 2 different purposes. Veterans preference gives eligible veterans preference in appointment over many other applicants. In the competitive service, for instance, the federal system, when agencies use a numerical rating system to determine the best qualified applicants for a position, an additional 5 or 10 points are added to the numerical score of qualified preference eligible veterans. Veterans preference does not guarantee veterans a job, and it does not apply to internal agency actions such as promotions, transfers, reassignments, and reinstatements. Special hiring authorities, also called hiring paths, help federal government hire individuals that represent our diverse society. Special hiring authorities include veteran-specific paths like the Veterans Recruitment Appointment, VRA, and the 30% or more disabled veteran authority, as well as other hiring authorities for recent graduates, individuals with disabilities, or the Schedule A hiring authority, and Peace Corps and AmeriCorps alumni. Special hiring authorities are also known as non-competitive hiring authorities. This means that anyone who meets the minimum eligibility for the position can be selected so long as they qualify for one of the applicable hiring authorities. The VFEC has helped more than 30 people get hired to positions that did not have open announcements on USA Jobs using the individual with disabilities of the 30% or more disabled veteran hiring authorities. I'm saying that simply so you are aware of the different ways that you can get into the federal system. Language proficiency levels are good to include in the relevant, if they are relevant to the business you are applying to. Current active security clearance aren't that as important, as I've said, since nearly every government agency will reinvestigate you anyway. If including your clearance, I recommend you include your adjudication date, just so that shows the agency that you shouldn't have any issues when you're reinvestigated. Again, make sure you read the fine print of the announcement and include everything they want to see and nothing they don't. This includes the fact that some agencies, again, consider your street address and LinkedIn URL to be PII and will remove your resume from consideration if you include these things. Before moving on, let's pause for a second. Are there any questions?
So for city address, you just put the city instead of the street address, or just
Yeah,
omit that?
just city and state. Right. Hang on. All right, building your federal resume for the veterans out there. It is a myth that military and civilian experience is different. All experience is professional work experience. This includes part-time and unpaid work experience as well. You want to express that you have the specialized experience the agency is looking for, saying that the experience was gained in the military makes them think that your experience is limited only to that. You want an agency to know you have the experience they're looking for. Where you got it doesn't matter. Your resume should cover the last 10 years of work experience, but this is only a recommendation. If shorter than 10 years because of, say, high school, make sure to include any jobs or volunteer activities you participated while in high school. If you need to go back farther than 10 years to show you have the qualifications the agency is looking for, do so. Your resume can be in bullet or narrative format. You need to figure out what is the best way for you to convey your experience. Don't forget to include any part-time unpaid experiences that might overlap with your full-time work. This can be especially important, or this is especially important when you have a part-time gig that may require you to demonstrate vastly different skills and competencies than your full-time job. Next, when developing your federal resume, each professional experience must include a job title. The military veterans out there, civilians won't know what a sergeant major, NCOIC, watch NCO, petty officer, or staff sergeant is. In these cases, try things like first line supervisor, senior instructor, organization administrative and logistics manager. For that, we do have a guide that SFFEB has been working on, a military to civilian transition guide with many federal HR specialists. That will be offered the link will be offered at the end of the course for anybody having trouble translating your military to civilian terms. The employer's name. This is really the only section for the vets that should have a military term in it, just because you can't get away from it. For instance, the 102nd Transportation Company, the Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command, Bravo 152nd General Support Aviation Battalion. That's where you work. So that it's implied that those will have military terms. Dates. Another reason I don't like, Another reason I don't like the USA Jobs resume builder is it will only allow you to put the month and year that you served on your resume. But some agencies want to see month, day, year. If they don't see month, day, year, you do not follow instructions, and they will immediately toss your resume and remove it from consideration. So be aware. Your supervisor's name and phone number needs to be included. Don't be afraid to put a no as whether or not the agency can contact your supervisor. But again, be prepared why. Agencies understand that you're probably looking for another job. You may be currently employed. So again, if you put no, you don't want them to contact your current supervisor. Again, it's not as bad a thing as you might think. This is an example of a federal work experience block. My resume. The federal employee, I include both my pay band, which is GS, my series, which is 034. That's actually correct. So they work with that. Grade and step, as well as my salary. So it is the same as the rest of my experience blocks. Since this is a federal position, I make sure to include this is a federal position statement at the bottom. Note, for the purposes of federal resumes, military service and government contracting positions are not considered federal positions. Just remember that. Here's another example of the resume. This is actually an M-Day experience. I was active guard reserve when I was in the service, so I had my full-time job, but also a leadership position within the National Guard. So as you can see here, I had a salary. I worked 40 days a week. I was a human resources director. I was an 04 level, which is the GS-13 equivalent. Again, that is because even though you might be or have been active duty, you're not considered a federal employee. Sorry, that made no sense trying to read and type at the same time. This one is the one for my M-Day point. This example shows how you can add part-time or reservist National Guard positions that run concurrent with your full-time job. Remember, the salary and hours information here is considered typical and should be an average of the hours per week, and yes, hours per week you work and pay. For this example, since I was AGR again, active guard reserve, I also had a part-time National Guard position with duties and responsibilities far different than my full-time position. So I wanted to make sure to capture that information. Because I was on active duty, I didn't get paid for my M-Day job, so I show that by including a paid salary section. For those of you that may have been activated, put on orders for an extended period of time, etc., I recommend you include those as achievements in your experience, because again, being activated for a emergency response mission, for a civil support mission, is above and beyond your normal job and expectations. We'll pause for a second. Does anybody have any questions? All right, I got one from Jody. Can you leave off the date of graduation college to avoid being subject to potential ageism? No, Jody, you do need, it is required that you do put the dates, the graduation dates within there. I understand where you're coming from. That I got nothing. Sorry. I hope that both helped and didn't help at all. All right. Before going into detail on writing quality experience bullets, let's talk some generalities. Solid federal resumes are about three things: detail, detail, detail. Your experiences need to include examples of what you manage, what you did, and/or tasks you completed, not the things you were quote unquote responsible for or assisted with. Your resume needs to describe the scope of your duties, how many employees you supervised, how much money you managed. Were you a decision maker? You know, you do this by including examples. It should include examples of your accomplishments, awards, and recognition you've earned, as well as details and a summary of why you earned them. Make sure you use quantifiable metrics whenever possible. Improved X% by Y% within C months, things like that. And what's the word I've used a couple times there? That's right, examples. The agencies want to see examples of what you did, how you did it, when and why. If you're not going to give examples of how, where, when you used a competency or skill, you might as well not even include that competency or skill in your resume. Again, think of your federal resume as a test, the first of several challenges you need to overcome in order to become a federal employee. Every test has questions, and understanding those questions can be key to a passing or failing grade. For federal resumes, the test questions are made up of specialized experience, competencies, required training if applicable, and the supplemental questionnaire. First, without the requisite specialized experience as defined in the announcement, it is unlikely that your application will be considered best qualified and referred to the hiring manager. The book definition of specialized experience is a type of work experience that is directly related and relevant, there's that word again, to the position which you are applying. Next, sections in the job announcement that refer to how you will be qualified and evaluation factors and competencies are telling you the metrics they, the agency, are going to use to grade your resume. When grading, the agency will determine how well your resume describes how, when, how often you have used the competencies the agency is looking for. Next, you need to ensure you have any required courses, training, if applicable. This section includes any special or specific schooling, education course requirements, certifications, etc. Finally, the supplemental questionnaire selections you make are to accurately describe your training and experience carrying out the task. We will go into each of those in detail. Dates. In the federal government, 52 weeks is an important benchmark. For Fed HR folks, 52 weeks of experience equals 52 weeks of 35 to 40-hour work weeks. This is why the reviewing HR professional needs to know your employment dates, your exact employment dates. Don't think you're getting away with anything by only putting the month and year for your employment dates. For instance, by putting January 20th or January 2020 to December 2020 on your resume, you won't be assessed as having 52 weeks of experience. We'll only get you assessed at 54. Why? Because federal HR personnel default your start date to the last date of the month and your end date to the first. By putting January 2020 to December 2020, you're basically putting down January 31st, 2020 to December 1st, 2020. That's only 44 weeks. Even if you left a job mid-month, you still want to get credit for the time you worked, which brings us to the hours worked. In order for you to be assessed as having 52 weeks time and grade or 52 weeks of experience, the agency needs to know how many hours a week you worked. The federal government, they have determined that full-time, again, means 35 to 40 hours a week. Putting anything less means your experience won't be graded as full-time. But what about more than 40 hours a week? If your normal duties require you to work more than 40 hours a week, say so. But say it is an achievement, not as a normal thing, especially if the 40 hours of work week is what you're supposed to work, but because of mission requirements, emergencies, things like that, you would end up working more. Why? Because we understand you may have worked 60 hours a week, but what were you scheduled to work? If under 60 hours, put what you should have been working, and then put the bullet how you routinely worked additional hours in order to ensure success of the organization's mission somewhere in your experience. Now back to the example. What if you don't have 52 weeks of experience like in the first example? First example, the inclusive dates are 10/1/2020 to present. In this example, present is looks like March 31st, 2021. Here, we see that the applicant will only get credit for 24 weeks of experience, but needs 52 weeks of experience in one of the specialized experiences. For many of us, military veterans or not, we often do similar things in every job. You may have conducted quarterly performance evaluations in multiple positions, or maybe used certain management skills, technical or computer skills, report writing, etc. It's important to include what you did in every experience you did it. It doesn't matter if you duplicate the experience, if you did it or not. This is the only place that I would recommend that you can cut and paste. If you dealt with widgets in one job and then dealt with widgets in another job, there's no reason both those experiences can't have the exact same form. If you did something in more than one experience period, make sure to include it in both, or you won't get credit for it. By using the examples above, by including conducted quarterly performance evaluations in both positions, this resume would get assessed as having 104 weeks of experience. If you're shooting for more than that, just meeting the minimum qualifications, this is how you do it. Do you have any questions?
Brock, I think you became muted again.
Sorry about that. I had an emergency phone call. Some folks are still having issues getting in, and I really hope I just didn't hang up on that very senior person. I think things happen. All right, again. Sorry about that. All right, but how do you locate the specialized experience within the resume? Most USA Job webinars and classes will explain what is meant by specialized experience, so I'm not going to go in depth on this one. From this announcement, from this specific announcement, here are some examples. Take a look at the first line on the page. You may have 1 year of you must have 1 year of specialized experience equivalent to at least the next lower grade GS 11. This means your resume must not only show you have the experience that the agency is looking for at the grade you're applying to, but also show you would have met the time and grade requirements for the next lower grade. How you make sure you're meeting this requirement? By ensuring your entire resume to include past positions is tailored to the announcement. Neglecting this is the reason most people receive those do not meet the minimum requirements for position emails. I'll discuss that more in a moment. Remember the first required specialized experience? You must have 1 year specialized training at the level of difficulty and responsibility equivalent to the GS 11 grade level in the federal service. This is where most people get derailed because they spend all of their time writing to the current position and then neglect to ensure all of their past positions show the applicable growth and qualifications required for the announcement. Many announcements will lay out what experience at the next lower level look like, but many don't. This means researching what experience looks like at the next lower level. OPM has an entire library of competencies and skills at various levels within certain series. You can also gain insight from looking at lower level positions within the same agency job series. This slide here shows a short example of how progression in your resume should look. For instance, current bullet position, write policies for the organization. Your most recent past position bullet enforces those policies written by someone else. Looks like we got a question in the chat. Is this a good example? 4 years of work experience. Yeah. Data, month, day, years is the example I recommend going off there, Robert. All right. How do we tailor? Well, let's take the specialized experience, preparing presentations, white papers, and reports for personnel at all levels. Think about your own work experience. Who can give me an example of a potential resume bullet for that specialized experience? Preparing presentations, white papers, and reports for personnel at all levels. Anybody, come off, go ahead, come off mute. See if you can write a bullet for this.
I would say something like brief senior level executives on whatever topic it was.
All right, very good. Yes, you're stating who and what, right? With that though, detail. From the example, we can address preparing presentations and how often they did it, as well as the levels that they presented to. The example is being prepared and verbally presented weekly organizational status briefings and reports to organization employees, managers, and executives. Utilized MS PowerPoint to develop briefings and MS Word to develop multiple white papers on equipment statuses written to the applicable level of audience. The applicant explained what systems and applications they use, as well as how they both wrote and verbally briefed the information. From this bullet, I see the person has technical competence, experience with oral and written communication, as well as experience using Microsoft Office products. This individual has experience speaking to employees, managers, and executives. However, there is something very important missing. What is that? Impact. There you go. I like it. This example is purposely missing quantifiable metrics. What was improved by all this? By how much? How long did it take? This bullet is missing the so what of why it was included in the resume. Next, we will discuss your resume, how your resume can be graded. Reading through the announcement, you were told that something to the effect of you will be evaluated on the basis of your level of competency in the following areas. These areas are also called competency. Most announcements will be different, so these are only examples. So looking at these 4 competencies, what is the announcement looking for? What do they mean? Let me come off mute. What do they mean by adaptability? What do they mean by information management? What do they mean by problem solving? No one wants to try and take a stab at it?
Yeah, I would say that. So for in terms of adaptability, as far as like being able to have a flexibility, so be able to kind of learn things on the go and apply those as needed to expand their job requirements as the job builds in itself. Information management, just organizational skills, understanding the all the security application that goes on top of managing the information that falls under them, as well as problem solving, which may be how they helped their higher leaders in helping their problems sometimes. Technical competency, I would say, is simply nothing more than just being able to stay up to date on the technology that is presented to the office that they're working and be able to learn that technology and integrate it into their day-to-day work.
Great, and that's awesome. Where did you come up with that? Just from your experience, that's what you think those the definitions, those terms are?
I just did it ad hoc right now.
No, perfect. That's great. So it makes a great point because like everything, words matter and words have definitions. So OPM lists the definitions of their competencies in a document called the Multi-Purpose Occupational Systems Analysis Inventory Closed-Ended or Mosaic, MOSAIC competencies. A link will be included this at the end of the presentation. You can also just Google it. It'll pop right up. For this particular competency, adaptability, the Mosaic Guide lists the definition as understands changes in work tasks, situations, and environment, as well as the basis for change, persists towards solutions and goals in changing circumstances, acknowledges new information and adjusts response accordingly, adjusts timelines, results and expectations accordingly, meets changing needs, overcomes obstacles to achieve results, thinks and acts effectively under pressure, identifies ways to incorporate new practices, framework, and remains flexible, open to new ideas, encourages, blah, blah, blah. So based on this definition of adaptability, what could an experience bullet from your life look like? Anybody want to try and take a stab at it? No? That's all right. Well, the potential bullet could read like this. Conducted daily reviews of programs and program tasks with subordinate managers, making as needed adjustments to timelines and expectations based on new information. Identified and rectified staffing challenges that would have prevented timely completion of the project. Developed new practices that fit into existing constraints and implemented changes based on project segmentation. Result, project was delivered on time and under budget. So how's that for a bullet? Still missing the important stuff, right? The how, the when, the percentages, the impact. Can't make it too easy for y'all. But this is what a solid bullet looks like. And yes, that is a bullet that I pulled out off of my resume minus the impact stuff. Go to the next one. Our next competency is problem solving. Its definition is identifies problems, determine accuracy and relevance of information, uses sound judgment to generate and evaluate alternatives and to make recommendations. What could an experience bullet for this look like from your own experience, work experience? Anybody want to Roger up? Long bullets. Oh yeah, very long, very detailed. No? Well, Jody, here you go. Here is our imaginary applicant has included their bullet for this one. Evaluated business practices, process devoted to scheduling, as well as an analysis of workflows, value added, impact, and utility derived from cost benefit analysis. Coordinated with regional IT team, provided guidance and directed development of regional scheduling system for scheduling HSDPE 12 sites across California. Results: increase in customer service, receiving no negative customer service experience comments while in position, and scheduling system is being adopted by 2 other EPA regions. So, does our bullet match what the competencies is looking for? So thinking back to what our competency is looking for: problem solving, identifies problems, determines the accuracy and relevance of information, uses good sound judgment to generate and evaluate alternatives and make recommendations. Does our imaginary bullet cover those bases? Anybody want to Roger up either in the comment box or anything? What do you think? No? All right. Well, again, this is a resume bullet example taken from my resume, and I am a federal employee, so I think it was a pretty good. I think it was a pretty good bullet. All right, we have 34 slides to go, and I would like to take a 5-minute break. 1 second. You mentioned bullets and non-bullet paragraph style. Are they treated equally? Bullets provide much more readable format at a glance. Yes, Jody. So yes, absolutely. However, as we'll discuss here in a few minutes, I personally like the bulleted paragraph style, bullets of 3 to 5 sentences. Which are basically small paragraphs, but we can go into that more later. So I currently have 4:01 Pacific. So let's take a 5-minute break and come back here at 4:06. Get some water, get some food, hit the bathroom break, and then come back. So I will see you back here in 5. Jody Hammer, that would be awesome. Yeah, definitely. I'll include my contact information at the end of this. I would definitely like to connect. Our Veterans Federal Employment Collaborative is awesome collaboration. And basically, I designed it and built it because of the hardships that I faced as a transitioning service member from active duty into a federal position. Like going from military to Fed should be the easiest thing in the world. So, yeah, anything I can do. There was a previous question, would FHS count towards GS position? I don't know what FWS is. So whoever had the question, FWS experience, what is that? Make a last, make them back on. Oh, gotcha, okay. So, Adam Fuller, yes, wage grade is considered, you want to put that in there, in your job like that, because you do use your grade, pay scale, series, and step. That is also what federal, HR reviewers and specialists use to figure out your current standards and experience. So yes, that is a federal job. So yeah, you do absolutely write those the same way you would a GS. Remy, yes, we will have access to the presentation. We will post this on our YouTube channel, as well as share it on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then I will post this presentation itself, the actual slide deck, to our page, and to our LinkedIn page, Facebook page, as well as the Veterans Mental Employment Collaborative. People ask why I put this together, and people steal it, use it. I'm like, hey, if someone wants to steal it, use it. At least they're getting somebody smart on stuff. So I now have 4:07. We are going to dive right back in, so I can respect for your time. We're going to go right into it. So the supplemental questionnaire. Up front, most supplemental questionnaires are different. What we will go over here is an example taken from USA Jobs. These are a couple of examples of how you can preview the supplemental questionnaire. So for those of you that didn't know, you can preview the supplemental questionnaire questions prior to actually submitting your resume. And this is what some of the questions you will be answering looks like. Remember what I said about a test? Another example of a format you may find. This example requires you to select everything you may have experience with. Guess where else this information needs to be? That's right, your resume. And there are several other ways that supplemental questionnaire will ask you about your experience. Some will ask you to input examples, others will ask you for dates and job titles. You have to include everything the announcement and supplemental questionnaire are looking for in your resume. Now, supplemental questionnaires are also called self-assessments. This is where you get to select how well you think you qualify for the job. So by a quick show of virtual hands, who is here heard the myth that no matter what, you should always choose expert or the highest ranking possible? At least I show of hands. I got one, Tony, he raised his hand. Who else? Anybody else hear that? All right, I got 6, 7, so 9, good. So many of you have heard that. Well, it's a myth. That is a big old myth. That is a myth 100%. Yeah, it is 100% a myth. The fact is, if you inflate your qualifications and or experience, which means you select a self-selection that is higher than what your resume reflects, you may be removed from consideration for the position. At a minimum, your assessment will be downgraded and your resume will be put to the back of the pile. So make sure you rate yourself accurate. From here, something here. Highest level you can successfully defend, prove, don't overestimate, but generally RPCVs do not give themselves enough credit. No, absolutely. Be honest, be accurate, but ultimately be honest. If you don't feel you're the highest level one, choose the next one down. Go ahead, Maria.
Sorry, I don't know why my hand was still up.
Oh, no worries. Okay, so now you're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Here we're gonna discuss and go over the example of what should be reflected in your resume based on your self-assessment selection. Again, this is only a way to do it. And it's not the only format the questions come in. Bottom line, no matter what the supplemental questionnaire is asking for, your resume must reflect the. So let's think about this question. Researching, analyzing, and developing reports, data tools, and providing training to leadership. Based on the question above, let's see ways your resume should look based on your potential answers. For this format of supplemental questionnaire question, you have 5 choices. A, I have not had education, training, or experience. B, I have had education or training in how to perform this task, but I have not have used it. C, I have performed this task under close supervision. D, I have performed this task as a regular part of my job. E, this task has been a major part of my work. I'm highly skilled at performing this task, and I have supervised and trained others in the performance of the task. So, supplemental example to the supplemental question. So A, I have not had education or experience in performing this task. This is pretty easy. Yeah, if you don't have this experience, it won't be in your resume. Next, from this example, we see the person has training, but they don't say that they've used it where and in what environment. So resume bullet could read, attended administrative excellence training and was taught the basics of providing training to leadership. Right? That kind of covers the bare minimum. Now we're getting more information from the resume bullet. I performed this task on the job under close supervision from my supervisor. Here we can see that this person has some experience, but not a ton. Don't be afraid to pick this one if it's accurate. If you perform this task as a regular part of your job, resume bullet could read, developed in-depth reports on current operations using Microsoft Access, Microsoft Excel, and online organizational databases. Research including current status, upcoming changes, recommendations, updated and training leadership based on findings. Again, even more detail and more context. Finally, the expert. How could this bullet read? Example. Notice that the examples again are getting longer and longer. That's what detail and context look like. For this example, again, I left out some things that could make this bullet even stronger. What could add more weight? What could give this bullet more weight? Got Jody, your hands up.
Nope.
There you go.
Unintentional,
Numbers.
sorry.
No worries. All right, no, numbers, exactly. Honey, am I pronouncing your name right? Honey?
Yes, you're right.
Okay, cool. So no, that's exactly right. Numbers, the so what, the quantifiable metrics of what this individual. So again, I don't know how better to foot stomp this other than maybe this. If you're not sure about what to select, select the next lower choice. That way, if the HR reviewer sees you are more qualified, your resume self-rating will be increased. If you select something and it turns out that it was way too low and you self-selected out of the running, then the job may not have been meant for you. So just consider that as a life lesson. Now that you've got an idea of what we're talking about specialized experience, let's dive into how to make sure we're clearly detailing our experience and hitting the requirements the agency is looking for. Wordsmithing. The experience examples in your resume need to paint a clear picture about how, when, and where you gained the experience and met the qualifications the announcement is looking for. When writing out your experiences, think implied versus specified. The best answer is you must specify everything, even the things you believe are in the implied category. What do I mean by implied versus specified? Let's look at the example of taking out the garbage. Specified task, take out the garbage. Implied with that would be remove the bag from the bin, walk it to the front door, open the front door, walk to the garbage can, open the garbage can, put bag in the garbage can, close the lid, return to the house, closing the front door, and replacing the bag in the bin. When describing what you did, you should be as clear and detailed as possible. And don't just include how, when, and where, but also the skills used. Maybe you used another skill set, such as verbal communication, that you used while being responsible for directing incoming calls or stepping in to represent your supervisor. Written communication examples should state that written skills include, for example, any communication set. Don't just describe what you did as a duty or responsibility, but also include if you use Microsoft Office Suite software such as Excel, PowerPoint, spreadsheets, etc. If you use that to develop the report. For veterans and transitioning service members out there, writing in civilian language means avoiding military-isms, meaning jargon. Private companies and federal agencies don't have NCOICs, petty officers, sergeant major, platoons, ships, or brigades. You need to translate those things into something HR reviewers and managers understand. I've stated it before and will again several more times. You want the agency to know your experience is experience. Where you got it doesn't matter. This is the same with acronyms. Use them sparingly, if at all, and always spell them out at least once. Finally, when it comes to numbers, because the federal resume doesn't really matter about how long it is, I recommend either spelling out or writing out all the zeros. 35 million has more of a wow effect than just 35M. When defining your role, state the facts. Did you work on your own as part of a team, as a supervisor? Did you assist with other functions? Did you manage supervisors? Go beyond listing your job responsibilities by using accomplishments and examples to highlight the results of your work experience. Again, avoid militarisms when describing your duties. Use civilian terms when describing your organization. Instead of a brigade, try organization of over 2,000 personnel or agencies, directorates, office, etc. Avoid military-only organization titles like battalions and squadrons. When developing your experience bullets, you also want to avoid terms like helped with, worked at, assisted with, I have experience with. Instead, clearly explain what you did, what tasks you accomplished, and was that task key to the successful completion of the mission? Did you improve anything, change anything, better anything? What specific skills, abilities, and/or attributes did you employ to complete the task? What equipment or software did you use? You need context and detail. Again, avoid responsible for and served as. Instead of responsible for, try manage, completed X tasks, or similar action verbs that embody initiative. Don't just say major duties include currently I am working on. Clearly state that you did X, Y, Z. Again, did I mention you need to avoid militarisms when describing what you did? When developing your resume, it should reflect clearly the professional level you worked at. It should paint a clear picture whether or not you are a doer or a policymaker. Your bullets, narratives need to show you have entry, middle, senior, or executive level experience depending on the announcement. A good way to format your bullets and narratives is to help, a good way to help format your bullets and narratives to help add context is to use either the PAR, STAR, or CCAR methods as a template. Doing this will not only give you a strong format for your experience, but will also give you practice for your interviews, where it is strongly recommended you format your interview responses using the PAR or STAR method. A quick note, the CCAR method is the recommended format for senior and SES resumes. We do have a question. Reminds me to suggest you STAR method to prove your experience, situation, task, challenge. Yes, exactly. So we're going to go with good call, Jody. We're actually going to go into that here in a second. All right. We will start with the PAR. PAR is simple. Problem, situation, issue. Sets the context. The action, the A. What you did, the steps you took, and the result. In this example, this bullet example, the P, addressing mission essential function failures through networking. Coast Guard, blah, blah, blah. I'll let you read it. The A, by utilizing my professional network of contacts, was able to mobilize California National Guard, U.S. Air Force, Army Reserves, local Veterans Affairs Hospital. Result, to meet their short and long-term needs less than a week. All right, example using the PAR method. The STAR method is also a recommended method for answering all of the behavioral interview questions you will face during your eventual interview. I'm saying eventual interview, thinking positive, folks. It's a good habit to start writing and speaking in those terms now. STAR, situation, background. Task, problem to solve, goal to reach, task complete, skills used. A, action, steps taken to complete or achieve the goal. This explains the process you took. Finally, the R, the results, how you contributed, benefit, or improved your organization, the process, the important lessons learned or skills gained through the outcome. Example bullet. This example is using the STAR method. We can see, plays out the situation, plays out the task, plays out the actions, and lays out the results. The CCAR method is a method that we will discuss and do another class. If you're a senior person, GS probably 15 or looking to the SES realm, there are classes that specifically focus on that level of resume, and that's a completely different animal. So I'm going to leave that here. Moving on. I strongly recommend listing college education, military education, certifications, and other trainings separately. Pay attention to the announcement. Understand whether education will be a major factor or not in being qualified. Don't shortchange yourself because you don't have a full degree yet. Many jobs are looking for experience and transferable skills that are communicated in the resume. Although it is good to address education on the resume, you need to be conscious of whether that will be a deciding factor or not, so you don't have to be as detailed. If it's not a major issue. Volunteer experience is a really important section and can do a lot for your resume. Volunteer experience is any unpaid experience you might have. It can include work done through national service programs such as the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps. It can include details or interning for agencies or organizations. It can include work for other community-based philanthropic and social organizations like churches and schools. Volunteer experience helps build critical competencies, knowledge, and skills, and provides valuable training and experience that translates directly into your resume. When adding volunteer experience, you need to name the organization and location, exact dates for each period, the number of hours worked per week, a brief description of your duties, and identify your major roles, responsibilities, and accomplishments. All this looks familiar, doesn't it? That's right, because your volunteer experience is still experience and should be written the same way. You can also do this for affiliations. If you're affiliated with an organization out there, I encourage you to list it in your volunteer section and include everything you have done for that organization. Award sections are good to include if you have the room, but make sure you include a statement about any awards and decorations in your experience. This will give your experience more context, detail, and push your resume beyond just meeting the minimal qualifications. You would need a minimum of 3 professional references. That's it. That's a slide. The why behind this is many HR managers I have talked to, we all know and complain about how long the hiring process takes. So I recommend doing things, any little thing that can help the HR and hiring manager streamline the process a little bit by adding at least 3 professional references to your resume. If and when you do move beyond the interview stage and the agency needs to reach out to your professional references, they won't have to wait on you to send it to them. So that's why I recommend including at least 3 references. Agencies, bottom line for those vets out there, agencies don't care about military schools unless they taught you something that applies to what they're looking for. And again, they typically won't know unless you tell them. So make sure you include a short summary to let an agency know why the school you took is relevant. Shayla is asking if you are given awards as a result of your volunteer work, would you list that under volunteer experience award section? I'm going to do you one better, Shayla. I'm going to say both. The award section is more of an overview of everything you've done. Within the context of your volunteer experience, you can get more in depth and explain exactly what that award was for, what competencies and skills you used, and why the agency cares that you got that award and why it matters. Does that answer your question? I hope so. We're moving on. Again, agencies don't care about your professional training unless that training taught you something that applies to what they're looking for. And again, they typically won't know unless you tell them. That's why you should include a short summary of the skills, competencies by the agency training. And the same thing applies to relevant certifications. Short summary, skills, competencies, why they should care. Awesome, awesome. Any questions about the nuts and bolts of the resume so far? If you would like to raise your hand, I will call on you and go ahead and come off mute. All right. Done. Oh, here we go. Should academic publications and presentations be listed under the awards or separately? I would absolutely select if you have publications or writing credits or speaking credits, you add them into separate sections, either a written communication section, oral presentation section, a writing credits section, thing like that. That's how I have my resume separated. I've got all my speaking and writing stuff in separate sections, along with URLs to if it's a video of the presentation. Cool. All right, moving on. All right, this course is very much for everybody, not just military. However, for the military and veterans out there, the SFFEB's Military to Civilian Translation Guide is available on LinkedIn and Facebook. If you can't find it or would like to contribute, feel free to email us at contact@sffeb.ul.gov and we will email you a copy. Some of the things that you will see from me in the guide to help out. We've all heard it. I've said it several times. Your resume must be written in language the HR resume reviewer understands. The person reviewing your resume probably has no idea what the job is they're looking at, only what they're told to review. And the likelihood of the HR reviewer understanding what you did in the military is probably in the 1% range. This is why resumes must clearly state how you meet the qualifications for the position in terms the HR reviewers and managers understand. Here are some examples. Remember what we said? Military experience is experience, professional experience. The Army, Navy, and USMCs are not departments of the federal government, but the Department of Defense, Department of the Army, and the Department of the Navy are. The civilian side doesn't have military occupational specialties. They have career fields, specialties, job duties. What is a mission if not a project, task, function, or objective? For examples from our guide: NCO, manager, team lead, leader; NCOIC, supervisor, senior team chief; junior officers, project officers, general manager, administrators; reconnaissance, data collection, analysis, survey; couple of more, subordinates, combat, brigade, units. I will say this, so I will say this right now to the vets and transitioning service members out there. I would bet almost down to the event, down to the task. Everything you did in the service in the military is translatable and can be put on a federal resume. Just has to be, it's a matter of you translating into something civilian agencies and HR reps can understand. As we get closer to the end of our presentation, I would like to add these closing tips and reminders. Context matters. Explain what you did, how you did it, and if it made a difference. If it's not in your resume, then you didn't do it. Only include relevant information, but again, if it's not in your resume, then you didn't do it. I recommend you create one master resume as the foundation, as your foundation, and then take copies of it and then tailor those for each announcement. Your master resume allows you to put everything, all of your experience, no matter the MLS background, etc. Next, state the facts. Do not exaggerate. Avoid jargon and militaryisms. Now, jargon isn't just a military thing. Jargon is any professional environment that has its own terminology. And then, as you can see, when you get into the federal government, every agency has its own jargon. So try to avoid jargon whenever you can. Use acronyms sparingly, if at all, and be sure to spell them out at least once. Go as far back, FBI does, awesome. Go as far back as you need to in order to show you have experience and qualifications the announcement is looking for. Next, find a mentor, pick their brain. There are some great private organizations out there, and the Interagency Veterans Advisory Council, IVAC, is working on one specifically for veterans and military spouses, either in the federal government or transitioning into the federal government. Finally, your resume must be clear. Here are some additional resources. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. I will be forwarding out this presentation to everybody who took part in this. So my apologies earlier. I said I'd post it. I am actually going to email this presentation as well as the the resources that we discussed in this presentation to you and everybody who signed up and registered. Of course, some more resources, veteran special hiring authorities, additional resources on building your federal resume, the FBI's resume guide, Department of Energy's resume guide, as well as the link to the USA Jobs videos. All right, everybody, as we come to the end, I will ask, what are your questions? And this is my contact information for anybody who's interested, as well as for the Veterans Federal Employment Collaborative, as well as for me on LinkedIn. So with that, please feel free to email me with any questions we didn't answer or suggestions for future webinars, more effective. And with that, we come to the end of our question, and we still have just shy of 30 minutes to discuss questions. So this is me. This is what I'm about. Family wall behind me. I am here to answer your questions, hear your feedback, and hit me with your worst. So bring it up. And if we're done, this is the end of the conversation. This is the end of the presentation. I will share my screen again. So go ahead and come off mute. I'm going to share my screen with my contact info. But until then, I will answer any questions. We have another course. Yes, Jamie, we will. So what we're doing as part of kind of preparing and helping our federal partners is these courses will be in conjunction with a federal hiring fair. So we'll probably have one, once every month, once every 2 months. And it'll be about a week shy of the federal hiring fair that we are conducting next Tuesday in this week, or in this case. Jesse, next week's job fairs are focused on jobs in the Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area. However, most jobs are being hired across the country. So, feel free to check out what job series we're hosting for, and as well as locations. And like I said, it might be someplace good to jump on, check out, see what they've got available. Next, any other questions? I am here for you, so please, back to the beginning of the presentation. If you are overseas, what would you put for city and state? I would put military, just military installation of concern, whatever that is. Why do you recommend that we use our professional references? I recommend you include at least 3. Just because if you do get forwarded into the hiring process, the agency will not have to wait on you for professional references, since you already include them in your original resume. And it's definitely you definitely want to include at least 3 professional references. If you have other personal references, those are okay to include, but you definitely want a minimum of 3. The HR reviewers and managers that I've spoken to on the federal government, Department of Labor, EPA, as well as Customs and Border Protection, all like to see at least 3 professional references. So I hope right now everybody had learned something. I love these. In the previous point of section, do you recommend removing organization addresses? No, you want to have the address of your previous employment. The addresses you can have there. That's not PII because it's public information. So I would absolutely have that information here. Thing. Yes, I will send a resume template. And it will be available upon request if you want to updates. So from Holly, what about when we have to show religion, race, etc.? If it's church ministries, do we use those titles or do we adapt the language to be clear? Holly, that's up to you. I understand it. I understand that you don't want to necessarily put your religion in your resume, as it might be PII. However, if you are a minister or you volunteer and it's your either your church or your synagogue or whatever, that's up to you. I don't think it would hold it against you. In fact, it's against the law to hold it against you. So I will defer to whatever you feel. I hate to say whatever your conscience can handle, but that's about it. That's about what I got. Sorry. Anyone else?
Brock, Jonathan, Felice, I don't have a question for you, but what I would just add, very informative class. I really did appreciate you taking the time to put together this material and go into it in detail. This definitely gives me a better idea as to what I need to modify or adjust on my resume. So again, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. You especially are going to be you're going to learn the serious ins and outs of this. So this is what we're going to be doing, man. So Catherine asked, if we do not have any work experience in the federal government but have other work experience, can we write on the cover letter that even though we do not have any related experience, we have skills required? So Catherine, with that, I have never used a cover letter, just to throw it out there, be completely upfront and transparent. But if you don't have the work experience that they're asking for, you probably won't get the job. If you have the skills that they're asking for, that needs to be in your resume, not the cover letter, because your experience has to be attached to hours. You got to kind of think about how they do the math problem to determine your qualifications. Also, could you clarify? Did you say before that should not include our LinkedIn profile? Yes, I recommend not including your LinkedIn profile. I have seen on a couple occasions where an agency has determined that it was PII, so they removed a resume from consideration. So I've never heard the opposite. So I always defer to just in case. I hope that helps. Tony, got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just have a few quick questions. So as far as the employment or the history, work background, so one of the things that I often kind of get caught up in is how to quantify kind of my GS equivalent. And I think that from listening to you, which is a really good point, kind of looking at what those equivalents are in pay grade. However, what if is it more beneficial for me to look at what they're hiring at those pay grades opposed to, let's say I was working at the equivalent of 04, but what they're hiring that position as a GS15, they're hiring a GS15, and I'm saying I'm doing the same work. I can quantify the same work experience as what they're looking for. Should I put that as a GS15 equivalent skill set, or go based on what the military pay grade and what that skill set equivalent is in the GS scale?
So the great question, Tony. So with that, so for how I do it, and I'll be honest, I'm maybe a little shady on it, but so when I put 04 position GS13 equivalent, that's because according to the gotta look into my notes on what it's called. There's a document from the DoD comptroller that kind of lays out what the equivalents are. So that's why I include that. One of the other reasons I include it is because I was only, finger quoting, only a captain when I retired, but I was in an 04C. So I was doing 04 responsibilities and 04 duties as an 03. So that's how I did it. And again, that's just a little trick to use that doesn't have to be used. If you look at your qualifications and experience and you meet the qualifications of the job, apply for it, train it for the job, and then go for it. There is no direct line or equivalent that says, well, I was an 04, so now I get a GS12, or now I was an 05, so now I get a GS13. It's about how you write your experience. And if your experience is written, match the qualifications, not that you were there for have that. Question? Hey, Tony, can I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. I think that was great input. I'm gonna have to relook my resume and do some shaping of it because I've already had a few interviews, but I think that as I keep on moving forward, I'm gonna have to really quantify those details a little bit better and put a little bit more of a emphasis on them.
Yeah, and if you need
Thanks.
some feedback, yeah, no worries. If you need some feedback, if you don't have my, there's my email address. Shoot me your resume. I'll take a look at it for you. And for some feedback. I don't, for anybody out there that offers open, for anyone out there, especially if that's, I volunteer for Federati to help folks write resumes. One thing I will say is don't pay for someone to write your resume for you. That's just a general thing. I'll say to everybody on the call, but I've reviewed about 3 or 4 resumes where they paid anywhere from $500 to $1,100 and their resumes were garbage. So, it takes some time it takes some effort to get, to do your federal resume correctly to get that job. And, ultimately for those on the call, getting a federal job is the hard part. So, instead of, take a look at what your priorities are. If it's getting a federal job, then get your federal job. Once you get your federal job, you're not in the military anymore. You don't have to stay in that position for a long time. When and if a better federal job or your dream job comes available, apply. For instance, when I retired from the Army in 2021, I was hired as a GS12 on the strength of my resume alone. I wasn't disabled yet. I didn't know anything about the scheduling hiring authority. The BRA doesn't work for GS12 and above. So I was hired based on the strength of my resume. 6 months later, my current position was announced. I applied, basically got promoted, but I applied instead of as an on-board federal employee, I applied as a public person coming in, veteran. And then, that's how I ended up getting hired in my current position. So Holly asked, in looking for which jobs to apply for, I was told that pay grade at a civilian job could be possibly higher and to not look for jobs that pay as high because it's not necessarily an equivalent transfer to making at the federal level. Is this a myth, and what are your thoughts on this? Thanks. So I have seen certain areas, yes, the federal pay is not comparable to civilian pay. Silicon Valley, for instance, that's in my region. So there's always these conflicts of, well, what can we pay? We can't pay people enough, that kind of thing. For the most part, unless you're entry level, if you're mid career, you're going to be paid more than you will in the civilian sector. The pay's better, the benefits are better, the stability is better. Coming from the military, we actually take a little bit of a pay hit because so much of our pay is tax free. So that's where a lot of transition service members take a pay hit. It's also, the things you got to look for are what benefits does the agency have. For instance, I live 2.5 hours from my office. I am in a hybrid work model. So right now I'm at home, but I have to go to the office on occasion. What does that mean? That means I take mass transit. I have mass transit services. The agency pays for my parking in the BART station, mass transit in the Bay Area. So those are other things and take into account. Why I bring that up as far as pay goes, because that determines locality. So a lot of federal employees love doing the remote thing, but they're getting the rude awakening that once they go remote, their duty location becomes their house, their home of record, and sometimes their home of records are out in the hinterlands, which have the lowest locality pay. Whereas, for instance, San Francisco, if you don't know anything about locality pay, GS specifically has a pay scale that's based on different localities. That area, I think the cost of living in locality pay is about 44% higher than the rest of the regular United States. So that's something to take into consideration for a job. The other thing is you can request for a private job where you made 1,500K more. In the federal side, you can discuss step increases as part of the process. They're called within grade increases. I have seen people go up to about step 3, never really more than that, but it's an opportunity for you to get, to take some of the discrepancy between what you were making and what you were making. So I'm looking for Jody. Many different pay scales as part of what you're using. Yes, many agents use the GP scale, if it makes sense. Higher pay grade, higher pay. P-score agencies have P scale with a lower grade. Okay, thank you. Yes. So yeah, Jody was responding for people that have different pay scales. So Honey is asking what percentage of minimum qualifications one should have to meet all of the minimum. There is one agency that you don't. So for anybody who's an American Indian wants to work for the Bureau of American Indians, all you have to be is American Indian. And pretty much all of the qualifications are right. Cap, thank you. There you go. So did I answer your question?